The Awakening. The Discovery High Admiral Krex stood before the massive viewing screen in the command center of the Terran flagship Dominion's Edge. The screen displayed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star in what the primitives called the Milky Way galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Terran Empire had ruled over 300 star systems, bringing order to chaos and civilization to the savage corners of space. "This world troubles me," Krex said to his aide, Sub-Commander Voss. His scaled fingers drummed against the metal railing as he studied the innocent-looking planet. "Our scouts report the inhabitants have barely achieved spaceflight. They fight among themselves constantly, pollute their own atmosphere, and waste their resources on trivial conflicts." Voss nodded respectfully. "Yes, Admiral. Our intelligence suggests they call themselves humans, primitive bipeds with short lifespans and crude technology. They have not even established a proper colony on their own moon. Surely they pose no threat to the Empire." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong about this assessment, but he couldn't identify what. In his 3 centuries of service, Krex had learned to trust his instincts, yet every scan, every probe, every piece of data confirmed the same thing. Earth was a backwater world inhabited by a young, violent species that had only recently discovered how to split the atom. "Have we attempted communication?" Krex asked. "Limited. Contact only, Admiral. We intercepted their radio transmissions decades ago. Entertainment broadcasts, military communications, scientific data. All of it confirms their primitive status. They broadcast their military secrets in the open, argue about resources while their planet suffers, and spend more energy on recreational activities than advancing their civilization." Krex turned away from the screen. The Terran High Command had made their decision. Earth contained valuable resources, including rare minerals needed for their expanding fleet. The humans would be relocated to designated zones, their world strip-mined for the greater good of the Empire. It was the same process they had used on dozens of worlds before. The hidden truth. What the Kethrans did not know was that 3 levels, beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that had been operational for over 2,000 years, Commander Zara Valdris was watching them back. The Deep Space Monitoring Station had tracked every Terran ship, decoded every communication, and mapped every weakness in their so-called invincible fleet. Zara stood in the center of the command hub, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of Terran vessels throughout the galaxy. At 35, she was young for her position, but her mind had been shaped by humanity's greatest secret. Earth was not the primitive backwater it appeared to be. Humanity had been playing a very long game. "Report, Dr. Chen," Zara said to the elderly scientist at the central console. Dr. Chen adjusted his glasses and smiled grimly. "The Terran fleet is moving into formation around Proxima Centauri. 6,000 ships, just as our models predicted. They believe they're about to conquer a defenseless world. And our preparations? Project Starfall is ready for activation. All orbital platforms are online, quantum communication arrays are synchronized, and our defense grid has been running, silent for 18 months. They have no idea what's waiting for them." Zara nodded. For nearly 3 millennia, humanity had watched other civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. They had learned, adapted, and prepared. While other species built empires through conquest, humans had built something far more valuable: patience, knowledge, and technology that made the Terran Empire's best weapons look like stone tools. The truth was staggering. Humans had achieved faster than light travel before the fall of Rome, but they had chosen to remain hidden. While the Kethrans built their empire through brute force, humanity had quietly established research stations throughout the galaxy, studying every alien species, learning their strengths and weaknesses, and preparing for the day when someone would threaten Earth. "The Watchers reveal themselves, Commander Valdris," came a voice from the communications array. "We're receiving the expected transmission from the Terran flagship." Zara straightened her uniform. This moment had been planned for generations. "Put it through." The image of High Admiral Krex appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features showing the arrogance that had made the Terran Empire so predictable. Behind him, Zara could see the bridge of his flagship, exactly as their intelligence had described it. Primitive humans of Earth? Krex began, his voice carrying the tone of someone addressing insects. I am High Admiral Krex of the Terran Empire. Your world has been selected for resource extraction. You will evacuate your major population centers and report to designated collection points. Resistance is futile. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels, and your crude technology cannot match our empire's might. Zara allowed herself a small smile. Admiral Krex, she replied calmly. I am Commander Zara Valdris of Earth Defense Command. Before you proceed with your invasion, I thought you might like to know that we've been watching you for quite some time. The Admiral's expression shifted slightly. Watching us? Impossible. Your species has barely achieved spaceflight. That's what we wanted you to believe, Zara said. Tell me, Admiral, how long do you think it takes to build a fleet of 6,000 ships? The current fleet represents 4 centuries of construction across 47 systems, Krex replied automatically, then seemed to realize he had given away strategic information. 4 centuries, Zara mused. Impressive. We built our defense network in half that time, but then again we had certain advantages you lack. What advantages could a primitive species possibly? Knowledge, Admiral. While you were busy conquering primitive worlds and celebrating your superiority, we were studying you. Every battle you fought, every ship you built, every tactical decision you made. We know your fleet compositions, your weapon capabilities, your shield frequencies, and your command protocols. Admiral Krex's scales began to shift color, a sign of agitation that Zara recognized from years of studying Terran biology. You're bluffing. Our intelligence reports show your world lacks the industrial capacity to pose any threat. Our visible industrial capacity, Zara corrected. But let me share something with you. That mining operation on Kepler 442b that you're so proud of, the one that produces the rare earth elements for your ship hulls, we've been monitoring it for 60 years. The radioactive signature of those elements is quite distinctive. She nodded to Dr. Chen, who activated a secondary display. We've also been tracking your supply lines, your patrol routes, and your communication networks. Would you like to know how many of your supposedly secure transmissions we've intercepted and decoded? The color of Admiral Krex's scales was now approaching. Full combat red. Even if what you claim is true, you cannot stand against the might of the Terran Empire. Our shields can deflect any weapon your species might possess. Can they deflect quantum singularities? Zara asked quietly. The bridge of the Terran flagship fell silent. The moment of truth, Dr. Chen leaned toward Zara. Commander, our deep space. Sensors show the Terran fleet is accelerating toward Earth. They'll reach the outer system in 72 hours. Zara turned back to the screen where Admiral Krex was clearly struggling to maintain his composure. Admiral, I'm going to make you an offer that your Empire's arrogance will prevent you from accepting. Turn your fleet around, leave this system, and never return. In exchange, we'll pretend this conversation never happened. The Terran Empire does not negotiate with primitives. I was afraid you'd say that. Zara gestured to her communications officer. Send the activation codes to all stations. Across the galaxy, hidden installations that had been dormant for centuries suddenly came online. Research stations disguised as asteroids powered up their quantum arrays. Deep space platforms that had been invisible to all sensors revealed themselves to the universe. And in Earth's solar system, defensive structures that had been built into planets, moons, and seemingly empty space began their final preparations. Admiral Krex, Zara said, you've spent 4 centuries building a fleet to conquer primitive worlds. We've spent 3 millennia preparing for someone exactly like you. The difference is we only needed to be right once. The transmission ended, leaving the Terran Admiral staring at a blank screen. For the first time in his long career, Krex felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not of death, but of the possibility that everything he believed about the universe might be wrong. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Zara turned to her assembled staff. Ladies and gentlemen, Project Starfall is now active. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology. It was our patience. The waiting was over. After 3,000 years of preparation, humanity was ready to show the universe what they had built in the shadows, while empires rose and fell in the light. The reckoning, the fleet arrives. 3 days later, the Kethran invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 6,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the pride of an empire that had never known defeat. Each vessel was a marvel of engineering, equipped with weapons capable of cracking planets and shields that had withstood the firepower of entire civilizations. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying tactical displays that showed Earth's pathetic defenses, a few space stations, some primitive satellites, and what appeared to be a small fleet of perhaps 50 vessels. The humans' boastful words 3 days ago now seemed like the desperate bluff of a doomed species. "Subcommander Voss," Krex said, "begin the bombardment sequence. I want their industrial centers eliminated first, then their major population centers. Leave enough survivors to serve as a labor force for the mining operations." "Admiral," Voss replied hesitantly, "should we not be concerned about the humans' claims? What if they were telling the truth about their hidden capabilities?" Krex's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. "Look at your scanners, Subcommander. Do you see any evidence of the vast fleet they claim to possess? Their quantum singularities, their defensive network? They were primitives attempting to frighten us with words they barely understood." What Admiral Krex could not see was the network of quantum phase devices that had been built into the very fabric of space around Earth's solar system. Invisible to conventional sensors, these devices had been growing and spreading for over 2 centuries, creating a web of interconnected energy patterns that turned the entire system into a single, massive weapon. The trap springs in the deep space monitoring station. Commander Valdris watched as the Kethran fleet moved into optimal position. "Dr. Chen, are all quantum phase devices synchronized?" "Perfectly synchronized, Commander. The Kethrans have positioned themselves exactly where our models predicted they would. Their formation is designed for maximum intimidation, but it's also created the ideal conditions for Project Starfall." Zara activated her command console. "All stations, this is Commander Valdris. Prepare for Starfall activation on my mark. Remember, we only get one chance at this." Across the galaxy, hundreds of hidden human installations received the signal. Scientists who had devoted their entire lives to this moment made final preparations. Engineers checked quantum field generators that had been built in absolute secrecy. And on Earth, families gathered around communication devices knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether their world lived or died. "Admiral Krex," Zara said, opening a communication channel to the Kethran flagship. "This is your final warning. Withdraw your fleet now." "The time for words has passed, Primitive," Krex replied. "Witness the power of the Kethran Empire. All vessels open fire." 6,000 ships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. The combined firepower would have been enough to sterilize a dozen worlds, turning planets into molten slag and wiping entire solar systems clean of life. The energy beams, particle cannons, and plasma torpedoes streaked through space toward Earth, a wave of destruction that should have ended humanity's story in a matter of minutes. Instead, the weapons simply vanished. The power of preparation. "What happened to our weapons?" Voss demanded, staring at his tactical displays in confusion. "The energy readings show they fired correctly, but there's no impact, no detonation, nothing." Admiral Krex was studying his own displays with growing alarm. "Run a full diagnostic on all weapon systems. There must be some kind of malfunction." "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "all systems are functioning perfectly. The weapons fired, but it's as if space itself absorbed them." That was closer to the truth than they realized. The quantum phase devices created fields that converted matter and energy into harmless quantum foam, effectively making it impossible for any attack to reach Earth. But Project Starfall was far more than a defensive measure. On Earth, Dr. Chen smiled as he watched the readings from the quantum field generators. "Phase conversion complete, Commander. The Kethran weapons have been absorbed and converted. We now have enough stored energy to power our entire civilization for the next 1,000 years. Or," Zara said quietly, "enough to do something far more Immediate. Activate the Starfall Protocol. What happened next redefined the concept of warfare. The quantum phase devices that had absorbed the Kethran attack began converting that energy into focused gravitational waves. These waves, invisible and unstoppable, reached out across space and began to affect the fundamental forces holding the Kethran ships together. The fall of an empire Admiral Krex felt at first as a subtle vibration in the deck plating. Then the ship's gravity systems began to fluctuate wildly. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the fleet as 6,000 vessels simultaneously experienced the same phenomenon. "Report!" Krex shouted over the growing chaos on his bridge. "Sir, we're experiencing massive gravitational anomalies. The ship's structure is under stress beyond design limits. Hull integrity is failing on deck 7 through 12. The entire fleet is affected, Admiral," Voss added, clutching his console as the ship lurched violently. "Whatever the humans have done, it's tearing our ships apart at the molecular level." Through the main viewing screen, Krex watched in horror as ships throughout his magnificent fleet began to collapse inward. Not exploding, not burning, but simply folding in on themselves as if space itself was crushing them. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Thousands of massive vessels crumpling like paper in an invisible fist. "Impossible," Krex whispered. "No primitive species could possess such power." Commander Valdris's voice echoed throughout the dying fleet. "We tried to warn you, Admiral. Humanity has been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. While your empire conquered primitive worlds, we studied the fundamental forces of the universe. While you celebrated your victories, we learned patience. And while you built weapons to destroy, we built understanding." The flagship Dominion's Edge shuddered as its hull began to compress. Krex stared at the communication screen where the human commander's face remained calm and resolute. "What are you?" "We are what you could have become," Zara replied. "If you had chosen wisdom over conquest, patience over aggression, knowledge over dominance. We are humanity, and we have been watching you for a very long time." The New Galactic Order. The destruction of the Kethran fleet took exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, where 6,000 ships had once floated in space, there was nothing but empty starfield and scattered quantum debris. The most powerful military force in the known galaxy had been eliminated without humanity firing a single conventional weapon. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that humanity had quietly tapped into centuries earlier. Within hours, every major civilization knew what had happened in the Sol system. The primitive humans of Earth had just eliminated the Kethran Empire's entire invasion fleet in a display of power that defied comprehension. In the Deep Space Monitoring Station, Zara addressed the galaxy through hijacked communication channels. Her message was broadcast to every world, every ship, and every civilization capable of receiving it. "People of the galaxy," she began, "today you witness the end of an era. For 10,000 years the Kethran Empire ruled through fear and force, believing that might made right. Today, that empire learned the price of underestimating others." She paused, allowing her words to sink in across hundreds of worlds. "Humanity does not seek to replace the Kethran Empire. We do not wish to rule over other species or conquer distant worlds. But neither will we allow any civilization to threaten our world or our people." The implications were staggering. If humans could eliminate the Kethran fleet so easily, what other capabilities did they possess? How long had they been watching? What other secrets were hidden in the shadows of space? The message Dr. Chen approached Zara as she concluded her galactic address. "Commander, we're receiving communications requests from over 300 different civilizations. Everyone wants to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." "I imagine they do," Zara replied with a slight smile. "Fear has a way of making people very diplomatic very quickly." "There's something else," Chen continued. "Our deep space monitors are picking up massive fleet movements throughout Kethran space. Their remaining forces are retreating to their core systems, and several of their subject worlds are declaring independence." "The Empire is collapsing," Zara observed. "Without their military supremacy, they have nothing to hold their territories." Together, the galaxy is about to become a very different place. She turned to address her staff one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, Project Starfall is complete. For 3 millennia, humanity has prepared for this day. We have shown the galaxy that wisdom and patience can triumph over arrogance and force. But our work is far from over. "What's our next move, Commander?" asked her communications officer. "We do what humanity has always done best," Zara said, looking out at the stars through the observation windows. "We watch, we learn, and we prepare." The galaxy now knows that Earth is not the primitive backwater it appeared to be. Some civilizations will seek our friendship, others will fear us, and a few will inevitably try to challenge us. She smiled, thinking of the hidden installations throughout the galaxy, the research stations that had operated in secret for centuries, and the defensive networks that could be activated at a moment's notice. Let them come. Humanity has been playing the long game for 3,000 years, and we're just getting started. Epilogue. The Silent Watchers. 1 year later, the galaxy had indeed become a very different place. The Terran Empire had fractured into dozens of smaller states, many of which were engaged in civil wars. Former subject worlds had formed new alliances, and several civilizations had established formal diplomatic relations with Earth. But perhaps the most significant change was invisible to most observers. Across the galaxy, other ancient civilizations that had been hiding in the shadows began to reveal themselves. Humanity's demonstration had shown that it was possible to survive and thrive without conquering others, and several species that had retreated from galactic affairs millennia ago began to re-emerge. Commander Zara Valdris, now promoted to Admiral of Earth Defense Command, stood in the newly constructed Galactic Monitoring Center. The facility was a marvel of human and alien engineering, built with the assistance of 3 other ancient civilizations that had contacted Earth after the Starfall incident. "Admiral," Dr. Chen reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Proxima Centauri monitoring station. They've detected unusual energy signatures from the Andromeda galaxy." Zara nodded, unsurprised. "Another expanding empire, no doubt. How long until they reach the Milky Way?" "At their current rate of expansion, approximately 800 years. "Plenty of time," Zara said with satisfaction. "Begin long-term observation protocols. I want to know everything about them, their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. By the time they arrive, we'll be ready." As she spoke, monitoring stations throughout the galaxy adjusted their sensors toward the distant spiral galaxy. Hidden installations began new research projects, and deep space probes started their centuries-long journey toward Andromeda. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the species that watches quietly from the shadows. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for one moment of revelation, and that patience had saved their world and changed the course of galactic history. But the Watchers were still watching, still learning, and still preparing. Because in a universe full of predators and conquerors, the greatest strength wasn't the biggest fleet or the most powerful weapons. It was the wisdom to wait, the patience to prepare, and the knowledge that sometimes the most dangerous species was the one that said nothing at all. The silent watchers of Earth had spoken once, and the galaxy had listened. Now they were silent again, but everyone knew they were still there, watching from the shadows, ready to act when the next threat emerged from the darkness between the stars. After all, humanity had always been very good at playing the long game.